to bring some of these together within the design education special interest group to share with others. So what I'd like to do, Ross, if you can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. We first of all looked at this in July 2020. We'd had the first wave of the pandemic and everybody was diving into emergency mode in terms of online education. So we had a lot to learn. We improvised, we created best practice, we came up with new ways of working, but what actually worked for us and what stayed the course? Well, we now want to have a look at ourselves a year on from that point. And certainly at the ENPDE conference just recently, we held a session when we had a workshop and we took a lot of the points that we learned and collated them and want to share them with you here in this session quickly. We had an experience, we also had advice to share, and this is going to have an impact on the future of the way we teach design education. So what can we learn from this? Next slide, please, Ross. Thank you. So we looked at the two different areas that we studied. We studied the input from the DS chat room a year ago when we initially moved to online learning. And we shared our experiences of global design and how students and staff work together to design and to create things across the internet. We talked about 4 key areas that kept cropping up as being barriers and challenges for us to work with. Group work, studio work in particular, prototyping and CAD modelling. And we identified a number of challenges with some solutions suggested to those. Well, in ENPDE, just about a month ago, we looked at this again, and what we found were similar but slightly different topics. We still felt that student engagement was a real core point. Student well-being was of great concern, and the lecturer-student connection was extremely important. At this particular workshop, we came up with 19 challenges from the participants, and the top 3 were then discussed, and a number of solutions were pulled together at the end of that. And again, we're going to look at those and share those with you. Next slide, Ross. Thank you. Now, I'm going to hand over to Ross, who's going to give you a whistle-stop tour around all the challenges that we talked about, picking out a few of the real key ones. And then we will have an activity this afternoon whereby we'll look and reflect on those as well. Okay, Ross, over to you.
Great, thanks, Hilary. So this is an overview of the challenges we were able to identify in our workshop in 2020, and it was on the theme of design education, the transition to online. So at this point in time, there were a few academics, teaching staff who had the experience of teaching online either through online courses, or they've had to make some emergency measures in order to get online quickly, and so they had a little bit of experience at that point in time. But what you can see here is that we have some challenges of students working on the design process, remote video meetings, especially at that point in time when students and staff weren't very familiar with working in this way. Student bonding was expected to be a problem. First year student experience of studio work in particular for design, and many other issues that were raised there, including things like home internet connection, Zoom fatigue, a lot of practical issues as well. Moving on to some solutions and some examples of practice, we were able to identify that group working using distributed teams could come together and disseminate work with each other, and that came from our global design experience. Studio teaching used a mixture of live lectures and pre-recording short videos, worked well with students. Technicians were able to make model making and prototyping videos in order to teach students who couldn't be there physically in person, and that worked as a substitute. Also, students using low-cost materials such as cardboard to begin their model making, and things like hackathons were useful, and encouraging progressive tasks by reducing the requirements into smaller segments seemed to be good practice when teaching online. Moving on to 2021, the workshop that we had just at the start of September, which was on the theme of the transition to online, what have we learned? And we identified many challenges, many of the challenges that I've already covered, and a few new ones as well. In particular, we asked the participants of that workshop to identify 3 key challenges, and these were opportunistic interactions happen less online, and how can we overcome those? Difficult to study from home or indeed from shared accommodation, and this sense that the computer screen feels 2D and therefore there's a lack of 3D thinking. And that seemed to be something quite specific to design that would be useful for us to overcome, particularly when we're used to 3D systems like CAD. And so moving on to some of the solutions to those challenges, one of which to that first challenge was a fika room, which is where students can drop in a social space. And there might be some technologies such as GatherTown or Slack or Discord that could be used to create a virtual university environment. The second of those was to do prototyping, and so things like Play-Doh or £1 store materials could be used in order to quickly get students to explore form and function at the very start of the design process. And then moving on to that last challenge, which was a little bit more of a difficult one, the 2D, 3D problem. Well, we kind of had a discussion around different technologies that could be used and how they could impact the design process. In particular, AR and VR is very promising, but is still very expensive. But also just encouraging students to get out into the real world to experience problems that are out there. And so this is what the problems that we expected at the first workshop, and then the problems that we experienced, identified at the second workshop, line up. You can see that a lot of the problems we expected did actually come to fruition, and we were able to overcome those in some ways. But there are some down the bottom there that we maybe expected that didn't really show up, or we didn't find any evidence within the second workshop, and vice versa. In particular, that very last one, that content needs rethought for online, that was something that is very obvious to us now, but nobody really mentioned it as an expected challenge, even though we were all in the process of redoing our online our content for an online platform by recording videos or reworking our presentations. But this is a bit of research output that we'd like to publish, probably for a conference paper, in order to discuss what we've experienced within these 2 workshops. But we also thought that it would be nice to be able to anticipate these problems throughout a year. So if we look at a student's experience, when might they encounter some of these challenges? How might we overcome these in the best way? And that's what we would like to ask for your help with today. So the challenge for today's chat room and for a little bit of a workshop activity is, can we build a timeline of support for design education online? Don't worry if you've not had a chance to look at all these slides and to read them in depth if you would like to. What we're going to do with the workshop activity will give you time to read each of those. But also we'll publish all the information on the Design Education SIG website, on the Design Society website as well. So what I'm going to do to begin with is to post a link to a mural board into the chat. And if you wouldn't mind joining the mural, and what you will see there, whilst you're getting connected, I will just share my screen so everyone can see it. What you'll see when you join the mural is that we've got 2 customer journey maps. One is for our first persona, which is a new student. And the second is for a second persona, the existing student. And we've got different post-it notes up the top. So the first one is our challenges that we identified in the second workshop. And we'd also like to give you the opportunity, if you have any challenges as well that you'd like to add on, then please use the purple post-its. And then we've also got the solutions that we identified, and any additional solutions can be added in this orange color as well. And we'd like your help to take the post-it notes, for example, for a new student, and to place it at some point in the academic year. So we've got pre-university, first few days, first semester, first exam period, second semester, and the second exam period. We've done this because it's the UK model, but if your university has a third semester, then perhaps it maps in with the first semester, second semester model also, and we can look at expanding that in the future. But hopefully you've all got access to Mural just now. I can see a few people are popping in, which is great to see. And it really is going to be a bit of a free-for-all and a bit of a discussion, and just read the post-it and see where you think it best aligns. If you want to add any thoughts, then I'd encourage you to use the yellow post-it, and you can just pop these anywhere you like along the timeline, and we'll focus on these pink post-its to begin with. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen just now, just so I can get a little bit of resource back. And if you've got any questions, now would be a great time to pop in and let me know.
Good, that's me in Ross as well. Now, this is a chat room, so we don't want to be doing this in absolute silence. So if people did want to talk and to share some of the experiences they've been having with online learning or online teaching over the past year, that would be wonderful as well. We like to always have a conversation going. Good.
Yeah, we should also mention that we're looking to collect some examples of these challenges and opportunities. So if you do have a particular example, please share them with us, and we'll find a way to collect that information.
So we will concentrate.
What else you can do as well, just sorry, Hilary, another quick instruction. If you feel that a post-it belongs in two parts of the timeline, then feel free to duplicate it and pop it in place as well.
That's great, thanks. Would you like us to concentrate on the first persona?
Yeah, if we can all concentrate on the first persona to begin with, that would be great. And then once we've moved our post-its into the right place, then we can move on to the second one.
That's great.
And again, if you've got any additional thoughts, just pop it into that yellow post-it underneath. If anyone's new to Mural as well, then feel free to ask some questions.
I'm just trying to understand the framework there. Essentially, see what I have been experiencing is looking at both the people who are just coming into the first year programs, as well as people who are going from first to second year, and both these categories we have closely observed. So for people coming into the institution for the first time, it has been a real challenge. Some of the issues that you have highlighted seem to mirror. So for them, they don't know each other. They are sitting in an online class. They don't know the institution. They don't know the faculty, and so it's a pretty difficult scenario in the beginning. So when we did a foundation program for them, we had to look at space to create spaces where they could actually interact with each other, and also give them some activities which they could actually do it at home using whatever tools and accessories that they can lay hands on. So we focused to a large extent on everyday objects around them, and so that was something which we could see that it retained some attention, at least for the first years. But for second years, we have seen a gradual decline in their energy right from the beginning. So we tracked actually over a period of 1 year the emotional energy levels among people, and we could see that when the pandemic started, there was an initial rise in the energy because everybody went home and there was a kind of some kind of positive energy. But once they started getting into this online, the first semester it showed a decline, but the second semester the decline further continued. The only time when they could actually see some positivity was when we gave some vacation break or things like that. So that was the time only there was a positive energy coming back. So engaging students has definitely been a problem, and gradually the amount of people talking in the class or engaging in the class has come down significantly. Like one of the things you have pointed out is not willing to share the video and just staying on mute for long durations. Even we have tried scenarios where we have waited for people to respond for even 15 minutes. Sometimes people don't respond.
Yeah.
So you do not know whether they are there or kind of thing.
Exactly. And Sudhir, which university or institution are you with?
I come from an institute called Indian Institute of Information Technology, Design and Manufacturing in South India.
In South India.
It's a
Great.
public funded institution. Um,
Perfect. No, I think it's what you've experienced in reflecting on many of the same things are here within the challenges. It's a global issue, and yeah, we can come together as designers and try to solve and share practice.
Were there any aspects or anything that you did in any of the classes that really made a difference, either to the first year or the second years? Has anybody reported anything back?
we do a lot of activities, classroom activities in the class. For example, for first years, it is mostly getting them to connect with their everyday objects around them. So one of the activities we do is what we call as system physics, where it is similar to the product teardown kind of activity, but we get them to really look at the entire physics of the product right from the part level to the system level. And those kind of activities we have definitely seen even in an online people showing some response, but it is lesser than what they do in front of us. We used to do the same program in a live class environment. The impact is slightly lower, but still there is a reasonable amount of engagement happening in such cases. Similarly, social activities, if you do it online, you have this restriction of how many people you can have on the screen and video bandwidth, and those constraints are there. But even when we did some small activities, very few simple activities, where, for example, we had asked all those in wearing yellow shirts switch on your video at a time, or all those wearing green shirts switch on your video. That small activities seem to trigger some energy. So in some of those sessions, we could see that, yes, getting them to physically connect in some way, even at least see each other, that is something which is helping. But in India, and of course, we still have this bandwidth problems, and not everybody will have access to the right type of devices and other things. So it is difficult to sustain that for long period of time. So if you do a 2-hour session, hardly about 10 minutes we can do like this. The rest of the session still has to be in a very limited way. So that is something is an issue. Another aspect which we did poll students at some points was to ask them um, why would they want to come back to the campus? Because everybody kept saying when we would come back to the campus, and so we asked them what is really the need to come back to the campus. So the response clearly is not for education. It is to catch up with their friends. that seemed to, I mean, because that social aspect, I think they all want that social connect, and that has been disrupted significantly in this process. So that is their main reason for coming back to the campus. Education is a byproduct of being in the campus.
I think it's also the same for us as staff as well. We want to see each other and to have the same connection, and so yeah, we're starting to experience that as well.
Yes, this is very true. The power of peer learning and learning in social situations cannot be underestimated. Certainly, COVID has put a lot of pressure on that, and our students are the same. They're reporting that they're very keen to come back onto campus, and that's to have those connections with each other in addition to carrying on their studies. So yes, some valuable things that we're finding out there, but the solutions to them and how to maintain these social activities and these social kind of connections in an online environment, connections that are as strong as we have in the physical world. Good. Good. Anybody else sensed some of the things that we have been finding?
So what I've just done, Hilary, is if anyone's got any additional challenges, then we've got little purple post-it notes that you can fill in and start to add to the timeline. In particular, we don't seem to have a lot around exams, but there's obviously going to be problems with examination of students. If there's any that you can think of, pop that in a purple one. And beyond that, I've also added on the solutions that we identified in the second workshop. And so people might want to add those in at different times of the year as well, so we can build up this timeline picture.
That's good. One of the challenges that we did have was around that theme of engagement and how hard it was to measure just how much students were engaging. There's one thing with them sitting in front of a video, and it's another thing them actually getting involved in a particular class. So if there's any solutions to how you can get students to engage or how you can measure their engagement, again, that would be welcomed solutions to the challenges that we do have.
So yeah, it might not be that we're able to get onto Persona 2, but that's okay, because you know, we'll be able to build up some sort of general map, and then we might get more specific as we move along. You can see just one comment in the yellow there, but if you do have any thoughts that you want to add, then just pop them in. And actually, now that we're doing the activity, I'm kind of realizing there isn't going to be much difference to that Persona 1, Persona 2. It is going to be more of a generic build-up. Perhaps some of the things that happen in the first few days for a new student need to happen pre-university for an existing student, or previous years over the summer months. But I think in terms of the layout of the post-its, they'll probably look much the same.
Very similar. Yep. Do we have any students online at the moment in the chat room? Nope. No students. I was going to ask from a student perspective.
All academics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now there's a very good and an interesting point, learning on the mobile. And again, the different modes of being able to learn are expanding and changing. I had several students at several of my classes, either sitting in a car or sitting on a bus, and they were able to just continue their day and to carry on their learning. The question is, what type of learning are they getting? Are they getting the same experience? Are they getting a worse or a better experience when they're being distracted? Or is that distraction actually something which is benefiting their learning at that point in time? What students certainly have said is that they're able to tailor their learning much better to their specific needs, and it becomes a more kind of independent and tailored and specific learning for each and every one of them. I'm sure a lot of you will have found things like that. Designing different types of activities. Someone's used the context eyes closed learning. That's a lovely phrase. Can you expand a little bit on that? What do you mean by that?
Well, I think that was me.
Was that you?
So that was in the past workshop. We were thinking about ways of, well, most of how we're teaching is either live, synchronous, online using Zoom or Teams or whatever technology package your university is using. But there's lots of other ways to learn. There's podcasts, there's articles that can be on our learning management systems. We can get the students to do different activities. And so it came up this idea of, well, we have screen fatigue and we've got sore eyes. How can we design in learning experiences with your eyes closed? And so that was kind of just to summarize that point. That's maybe something that it's an opportunity that comes at the start of the year when we're thinking about designing our classes. But using audio as a teaching tool.
Good. I mean, one of the things that is occurring is the repetition of the different challenges. They keep coming up no matter where you are in the globe. They're being experienced north, south of the equator, all over the globe, and they are similar issues, and they all have specific relationship to design and its uniqueness. And again, there are some wonderful ways that people are overcoming the challenges that we've got in terms of model making, prototyping, using simulations and so on.
Great. I think we've actually managed to place down all the post-its. Now, what I would encourage everyone to do is to go through and read them. And you know, if you disagree, perhaps they're in the wrong place, then maybe move them around the timeline and someone else, and we'll sort of critique each other's work just by going through it. Or if you do disagree, then put your microphone on and let us know.
And have a chat. That's great.
Yeah. It certainly looks like what we've been able to do so far is identify some opportunities to do pre-university and semester during the semester. I think that might be a better way to look at it than the sort of semester one, semester two. So maybe the first four columns are the best ones to focus on.
Okay.
Perhaps we might ask, as Freddie's on the call as well, he's got quite a lot of experience with sort of postgrad or older students, more mature students, those that are in companies. Is there, looking at the timeline for you, Freddie, is there much of a difference between a first year or an early, younger student and one of those that's more experienced?
Yeah, that's a really good point, Ross, actually. We've been running for a few years a course that works with a range of different sort of age groups, and tend to find that in some ways similar to the to your sort of more mature student cohort, in an undergraduate course, that mature students tend to be a bit more engaged in sort of discussion and ask more questions that are more than just the I didn't read the documents that have already been circulated, but are sort of, you know, interesting discursive questions. But also you find that there's an undergraduate course actually that we're running that's online. The first year students are very engaged with it's an online first course, and they're very engaged with all the discussion fora and things like this, and they're always posting comments and things like that. And partially that's because we've tailored it so that the first couple of weeks they are compelled to complete it in order to unlock the next the next section of the module. But they continue to do so. The momentum is maintained throughout the year. But then, as the years go on, the discussion forums and a kind of, oh, what did you think about this particular piece of content? What, you know, add a bit more information to it. That tends to be the engagement tends to slow down or reduce the older the students get, basically, in terms of what year group they're in. You know, are they in their second year, third year study, etc. That said, though, the comments that are left, again, they tend to be more thoughtful. Rather than just sort of filler comments, they tend to be comments that the students are almost, you know, they are encouraged, inspired to leave. Yeah, but I guess the trick is with that kind of pseudo artificial engagement is to try and opt for a carrot approach rather than a stick approach, where we compel some of the first years and the first few weeks to engage, and that's sort of the stick. You know, if you don't do this, then you don't get to continue. But it's perhaps reflecting on what the questions that we're asking are, and are there better, more appropriate questions that will, you know, almost, dare I say, excite our students to respond. Similarly, I think that I teach I'm responsible for teaching one of the practical skills. I teach sketching techniques to both undergraduate and postgrads, and there absolutely is a challenge, especially last year, teaching such a practical skill over Zoom. I know that there are classes that you can take online that offer that, but certainly from a reactionary point of view, that was quite challenging. And my sort of normal teaching approach on campus is to sort of get all the students on their feet to come around a table and sort of look at it as it happens, with a sort of bird's eye view. And that's hard to replicate digitally, and especially because even today I was teaching sketching on campus, but because of social distancing, it's a lot harder for students to sort of show off their work and allow for comparison between their work and their classmates, and sort of provide an opportunity for feedback between students and to get some ad hoc feedback from myself. So yeah, it's there's a few challenges, a few wrinkles that need ironed out for sure.
Yes, I found the postgraduate students to be very focused and very in detail, in depth in the time that they had allocated to your slot of a class. So if you had an hour for a class, they gave you your full attention and then they were off and doing other things. So they were more able than the younger years, the first and second years, to compartmentalize their time and to really focus. And I felt that the first years especially and the second years in an online environment, they needed an activity to cluster or work around, and very often preferable if that activity had a physical object to work with. And I think one of our earlier participants mentioned that as well, having the physical aspect and the physics of the object being something that they actually interacted with. Students tended to use video a lot. I don't know if you found that in any of your classes, anyone else, but I found that a lot of students showed me videos of either an activity they wanted me to focus on or a particular idea or creation of something that they had made, again very abstractly using very rough materials. Yeah, so they were always trying to make sure that the understanding that you had was the same understanding that they had, and that communication was quite clear, which can be very hard for a novice learner, but not so hard for our postgraduate students. Yeah, good.
It's a really interesting point. I feel that as we're sort of gravitating towards a more digital first assignment submission approach, where you know traditionally with design projects it's A3, A2 sheet pinups and things like this, or folios that are physical and tangible, and we're moving to digital, then that does open up opportunities for more multimedia approaches to file submissions, to explaining the rationale, and things like that. And with the democratization of video production, I've got an iPhone here, it's a perfectly good camera for most things, and you can shoot and edit on that relatively easily. Yeah, it does seem that would be a viable approach to certainly to the assessment, but as you say, as well as just students explaining themselves in a way that they're comfortable with, that gets the point across as quickly and efficiently as possible.
Yes, that's it. That's right. Has anybody noticed maybe a change to their assessment because of going online? Can we open up that question, the aspect of assessment within education? Dolly, do you have any findings that you have discovered as you've been carrying out online learning?
Hello, everybody. I hope
Hello.
my language has clear. I'm a speaker in Spanish, but I try to speak in English now. I try to open my camera. Regards from Cali, Colombia. Thank you for the invitation. About your question, yes, the challenge in this year to design is try to connect, yeah, with the person at all things about the communication. Yeah, the scenarios of the design is very close, the very touching of the person, and that the technology maybe will be replaced many things in house. Now, when we return to the classes, to the salon classes, is very complex because the person maybe prefer go to the virtual because of the synchrony, because maybe the autonomy, but I try to find the correct word, and try to connect. The assessment is very important to this, because we have to change the model of assessment in design. Of course, they try to maintain the communication, but try to maintain the levels of the competences in the design. I think this is a new challenge post-pandemic and the learning in virtual scenarios.
Mm-hmm. Yes. We're trying to look at what has worked well online and to retain that and to integrate that as we now move forward. The UK are now moving back to campus. We're in Scotland and it's not a full move back. I would say it's probably about 20% at the moment, but we're moving gradually towards back onto campus. However, online learning will open up doors for us to improve aspects of our teaching such that we can do more of the things that really worked well before. We can have more discussions. We're flipping classes now a lot more. Lecturers are taking advantage of having their lectures offline, recorded, so that students can look at them and then ask questions about them rather than just listen and listen to all the lecture being pushed at them. So we're finding we're hoping to move into a really new and wonderful era where we can get the best of both worlds. But that's going to take time. That will take time, because we've opened up the doors where we've allowed students to have their learning when and where they want. Yes. And now we're going to take that away from them a bit. And we're going to give them the learning in a different way. We're going to give them it in new ways, in hybrid ways. And now we want the best of everything. So this is the path we're now taking, which is a nice new open pathway ahead of us. Yes. Are you finding that, Dolly? You want the best of everything that's out there now?
Okay, thank you. I think in the different disciplines of design is very complex to know. I'm working in fashion design. And this year is very complex about the haptic movement, about the performance of the techniques, and because the virtuality, this is not possible. Only view, but the sensation, but the performance for the clothes and the materials are very necessary to stay in person. Nah? A student without a year or more, without connection with another person, with a guy, the sensibility has maybe lost. And I try to develop again.
That is very interesting. So how have you overcome that loss of being able to touch and to feel and not use all of your senses? How have the students coped?
Yeah, this is very shy for them. Yeah, because it's very, the performance is very shy. It's like a child. And they try to again, to experiment the soft of the materials, of the fluency is again, it's like a kinder, it's a preschool. The creativity go again, start in the workshops and the classes, because it's that very important and sensitive and feel the materials and the sensations.
Gosh. That's similar to product design students. That's the area that Ross, myself and Freddie are from. Product design, being able to feel and touch in terms of a product, for size, for scale, for smoothness, roughness, texture, all of those things. You lose those particular capabilities. Yeah.
Yes.
So we've moved a lot of our model making to CAD simulation, which is not it's not making the best of all of our capabilities, of all the senses. So again, there's a lot that we still have to learn, or a lot that we can add to that to make that experience more fulfilling.
Yeah.
Yep. I was just going to say there's got a few more people in the participants list just to check they had any comments. So Klaus, I spotted you had your camera on earlier as well. How are you dealing with the move to back into the classroom, or is it different in your country? That was for Klaus Hansen. He might have left us.
There is something I want to add on the.
Perfect.
Oh, there you are. We saw your face earlier, so I knew you were here.
Yeah, I prefer camera switched on, but I wouldn't be the only one with my camera switched on, so therefore I switched it off. We at DTU, my boss says it's important that we go physical, and we have physical teaching this semester. And one reason is if we teach online, you could get a diploma from DTU, but why not get it from MIT instead? So we have to bring something for the students, and we have to be together with the students. So I am teaching. I'm teaching physical now. You asked before regarding examination, and the course I taught this spring semester was a third year course where we had earlier online physical presentation. Now it's online, so I mean it's basically the same. There was something where I think there could be some differences here when we talk about it, because I'm very concerned. No, I think about some of your comments related to the number of students. I expect you must have a lot of students. We talk about 60 to 90 students in first year. I mean, if when you're talking about students or writing about students, it seems to me that you have several hundred students.
No, in first year it's probably around 80 to 100.
Okay, yeah,
is around right. Yeah.
I mean, there are some differences. If you have, here in the autumn semester, I have a course on master level where I have 60 students, and I can manage 60 students. I mean, it's not a problem. But if you become more than 60 students, become 90 or 100, you cannot, as a teacher, manage everybody, because you cannot remember what is going on. You don't have time. There was another one where I was very surprised. That was the one with overthinking. I would be much more concerned that the student, instead of think, they just leave.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, yeah,
that was a kind of surprise to me. So I think that was my comments at the moment here. But there's another reflection. We talk about design, that it's Ross, you said earlier that you are reflecting the UK system, and this is, of course, different from the system in Denmark. But also when we talk about design, it's like it's the same thing all over. But if we talk about fashion design, or we talk about product design, and we go into details, I'm sure we would find many things which are very very different.
Absolutely, yeah. There's definitely lots and lots of different levels there. And specialties at all the different levels, but I think I think what we're trying to do is to find the similarities where we can in order to help each other. But it would be really interesting to see it from a slightly different perspective, because there's probably a lot of technology, transfer of knowledge from those different levels and from those different people. Perhaps we need to open up the scope of the research to many different areas. Absolutely.
Also, where do we focus? Do we focus on products? Do we focus on services? Do we focus on the systems? Are we thinking about conceptual design? Are we thinking about these? I mean, there was something with sketching and model making, but there could be very different things also which would have an influence upon it. I am at a department of mechanical engineering, and together with the head of the study board, we looked into. We asked all our faculty how they experienced last year, also spring semester, where we had this certain change, and the university here asked all the students about it, and we looked about what did the students say about the courses in mechanical engineering, and what did the teachers says about the courses, and of course some of the things we have is the same, but one thing which is I think is very different is when you, for instance, solid mechanics or fluid mechanics, where there are a lot of equations, it's very difficult for the students to ask questions or to ask questions by mail, because asking the question, it is itself trying to formulate it, and there's something which is very different. And I don't know, maybe it's not a problem in our area because we don't have these very abstract concepts like control volumes and strings and strains or something like that, which is different. But at least I think it could be interesting also in what you are doing, finding out what are the ways we are teaching design, where do we see the focus. Here at DTU, it's very much formulating the problem, understand the different stakeholders, understand the concept. At least if you ask me, if you ask Tim Magaloon, it would probably be something about sustainability and things like that.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point. Just before this, I was teaching a class on literature review. And yeah, the students don't know enough about the topic in order to ask the question that they're trying to ask. And so I think when you're in person, you can get that sense from them. You can have the discussion, and you can draw things and draw diagrams. When you're online, you resort to the most basic language and trying to get that level of the student in order to communicate on their level. And yeah, it raises lots of problems there. But I think, yeah, there's even with that example, that's, you know, going from formulas to literature reviews, there's something in there where it's like almost a universal problem, but we can see it in our own domains in different areas. Yeah, that's good. Okay, Hilary, we've got about 5 minutes left. So just to summarize in terms of the mural, thank you everyone for contributing and putting the things in the order. We've kind of got a rough timeline and also rough solutions. And I think how we're going to try and use this, particularly at Strathclyde and DMEM, is to use this to prepare for our future years, is to say, you know, at the pre-university level, what are the opportunities that we should be exploring for next year's semester? And as we go through the year, what are the different opportunities that arise as well? And that will really help us in preparing. Yeah, and any conclusions, Hilary, that you want to add on?
No, this is quite a nice way of looking at it with the timeline. I hadn't thought about this prior to today's session, but I like the idea of pre-university and preparing students for the type of learning they may get, whether that be online or peer learning. Certainly as children grow up learning from each other. The younger they are, the more they gather together in little groups and they learn from each other. And that is something that we tend to lose with children when they're teenagers and when they come to university. And then we get them to do group work. And no wonder they hate us because they're we're making them work together. But there's so many advantages from that social working and from working together in teams. Successful teams do great things, and we know that. So trying to get some of that and how it works well in an online environment is probably one of the ways forward I would like to look into deeper. Yep.
Perfect. Okay, so just to sort of conclude a little bit, we will post all the information about today's session and the video and the image of the mural onto the Design Society website, but also the Design Education SIG website that you can access as well. So you'll get it in both places. And what me and Hilary are doing as part of the Design Education SIG is to build up this knowledge on best practices and case studies and how different people have been approaching design education, particularly in the last couple of years. And probably our next activity will be at the next ENPDE conference in London, where we'll hopefully share some of the outcomes of what we've been able to do within the workshops and do a little bit more analysis. But we're also trying to collect all this case study data as well, and perhaps that will be the next workshop that we can do as well.
Yes, that would be good. And again, the Design Society, the DSIG website will be a place that we can host this material, even case studies that can work that people would like to contribute. So that's great, Ross. Thank you for mentioning that. Good.
Perfect. Okay, so we'll call this session to a close. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming, and